1852 to 1855. These years were characterized by the nation's continued growth and arising problems concerning slave ownership and freedom, expansion, discrimination, and political controversy. The presidential election of 1852 gave way to the increasing tensions between the North and the South. The Whigs nominated Winfield Scott, a military hero from the Mexican-American War. The Whigs were hopelessly divided in the campaign. While the Southern Whigs enthusiastically supported their candidate, the Northern Whigs were reluctant supporters. The Democrats had nominated Pierce. This campaign was very personal, with both candidates accusing the other of having inadequate qualifications. Scott was accused of being pompous and too in love with his rank. Pierce, on the other hand, was accused of collapsing and being a coward during the Mexican-American War, where he served as a general, a citizen soldier. Pierce, who had been both a congressman and a senator from New Hampshire, was also a recovering alcoholic.
Hi, I'm Jessie Kay, and I'm standing outside where Pierce and Scott just had their presidential debate. Let's take a look at the highlights.
Franklin Pierce, what is your position on the issue of slavery?
I believe that slavery is a pertinent issue concerning the future of this nation. If elected, I plan to hear not only one side of this argument, but I will fill my cabinet with those on both sides of this debate. If we abolish slavery, the South will suffer economically. But slavery is an unethical and cruel practice in this nation today. I believe that until we can find a solution that appeals to both sides of this nation, we are doomed to fall apart.
Winfield Scott, your rebuttal.
Despite my party's pro-slavery stance, I am anti-slavery. I have a love for my country, as I have proved through my service in the military and active role in the country's affairs. I believe that the United States is far too good to be held back by the cruel practice of slavery, and as a country that boasts independence and opportunity, we should extend it to all people.
But these slaves are not American citizens. Wouldn't you rather have economic prosperity for the citizens of this great nation rather than extending our liberties to those who can't even appreciate what our founding fathers went through? My father was a leader in the American Revolution, and he did not risk his life so that those who don't even want to be here can be free. I would rather have the South, the people who live here, the people who love this nation, prosper economically than go for the moral opposition of those who slavery doesn't even affect.
Americans are hardworking, intelligent people who are well capable of making their own wealth and creating a successful economy without reliance on slave labor. I think the United States will be able to stabilize the economy after the abolition of slavery quite easily, and it will probably even improve as more American workers become employed and we are forced to rely on ourselves for production of various goods.
And how do you suppose we maintain a successful economy with the abolition of slavery? How do you suppose we make up for tens of thousands of lost laborers until we can find an agreement that works for both sides of this nation and not just the North? It's just not possible.
Pierce did surprisingly well in this debate. We'll see how the election turns out.
In the end, voters elected Pierce over the well-known general, whom they did not seem to like. This effectively brought an end to the Whig Party. Pierce was 48 years old at the time and had become the youngest man to be elected as the President of the United States. Harriet Beecher Stowe's best-known novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, was published in 1852, changed forever how Americans viewed slavery, the system that treated people as property. It demanded that the United States deliver on the promise of freedom and equality. The book calls on us to confront the legacy of race relations in the U.S. as the title itself became a racial slur. Uncle Tom's Cabin was a runaway bestseller, selling 10,000 copies in the United States in the first week, 300,000 in the first year, and in Great Britain, 1.5 million copies in 1 year. It resonates with an international audience as a protest novel and literary work. We turn now to reporter Jessie Kay, who interviews Harriet Beecher Stowe on her thoughts on the novel's publication and the people's reactions.
Hi, I'm Jessie Kay, and I'm here with Harriet Beecher Stowe, and we're asking her some questions about her book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Hi, Harriet. How did you first get involved in the abolitionist movement?
Well, I was raised in a very religious home, as my father was an outspoken religious leader, and I was taught to see the good in all people. My husband, Calvin Stowe, was also an avid abolitionist, and he and I supported the Underground Railroad and harbored fugitive slaves in our home.
So what was your reaction to the fugitive slave law passed by Congress in 1850?
Well, naturally, I was outraged. I felt that the United States government was treating slaves as possessions rather than thinking, breathing, feeling human beings. But at the same time, I also felt a little scared because, as I said earlier, my husband and I had helped escape slaves in our home. Either way, I knew something had to be done.
How did Uncle Tom's Cabin eventually become a reality?
Being a highly educated woman, I felt that the best way for me to speak out against slavery was for me to write about the evils of it. I contacted the editors of the anti-slavery journal, The National Era, writing a story on the problem of slavery. Uncle Tom's Cabin was published in installments in this anti-slavery journal.
Can you give us a brief summary of what Uncle Tom's Cabin is all about?
Uncle Tom's Cabin is a book that I feel gives a completely honest description of slavery and how the love of Christianity can overcome it. It shows the brutality of slavery and depicts slaves, especially Tom, being beaten and even killed. It also shows the reader that although not all slave owners treat their slaves badly, slavery is still morally wrong.
And finally, can you just describe to us the impact that Uncle Tom's Cabin had on America after it was published?
Uncle Tom's Cabin sold 300,000 copies in the first year of publication, which I was extremely happy about. I felt that I had really succeeded in bringing attention to the evils of slavery, which is what I had hoped for from the start. Obviously, not all people responded positively to my book, but I was willing to take the insults if it meant I was making a difference. Because of Uncle Tom's Cabin's success, I was able to meet with President Lincoln, who told me that my book was one of the causes of the Civil War. With this statement from the President, I knew that I had truly helped my cause to abolish slavery.
In other news, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed by the U.S. Congress on May 30, 1854. It repealed the Missouri Compromise, allowing slavery in the territory north of the 36th 30th line of latitude. Introduced by Senator Stephen Douglas of Illinois, the Kansas-Nebraska Act stipulated that the issue of slavery would be decided by the residents of each territory, a concept known as popular sovereignty. After the bill was passed, violence erupted in Kansas between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers, a prelude to the Civil War.
Hi, I'm Kristen Fahey, and I'm here in Kansas, where the controversial Kansas-Nebraska Act has been passed by Congress. This act sees a lot of dispute between the North and the South because it repeals the Missouri Compromise, allowing each territory to decide if they want to be a free state or a slave state. This is going to add to further dispute between sectionalism.
We would like to wrap up today's segment with a brief interview with our new president, Franklin Pierce.
We're here with the newly elected Democratic President of the United States, Franklin Pierce. Good to have you here.
Glad to be here, Jesse.
Mr. President, what makes you different from any of the presidents that have come before you?
Well, I was the first president to be born in the 19th century, as well as the first president to place my hand on a law book during my inauguration, rather than the Bible. I was the first president to recite my inaugural address from memory instead of just having it written down. And I've hired a highly diverse cabinet, which I think will bring more unity to this nation instead of the separation with political parties.
Now that you've been elected, what will be your first major order of business?
As of right now, I hope the American people will understand if things are not moving as quickly as they would have hoped. My son was 11 and he recently died in a train accident, and we are still mourning.
We're very sorry for your loss, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Well, what is your vision for America during your presidency?
All that I can hope to achieve in America is peace and prosperity at home. I want Americans to feel safe and never have to worry about whether or not they will be able to put food on the table. I believe that wealthy foreign relations can help me achieve this goal.
And finally, what is one issue that you believe may arise during your presidency?
I do believe that the issue of slavery is not yet resolved. During my presidency, I hope to establish that states have their own right to choose whether or not to be slave or free, because slavery is an immoral practice, but our economy thrives on the practice of slavery. And so, depending on where you live, I feel that it should be your choice.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your time and your commitment to our country. Now back to Katie in the studio.
Thank you for watching A Year in Review, and we hope you tune in again tomorrow.
No, we gotta keep the beard.
Alright, I can do this. Too good to be held back by the poor practices.